Welcome. This is our first ever Social Media Film Festival. Ross Martin, a good friend and our founder here at Social Media Film Festival, had an idea to create a festival that would celebrate the way social media has fundamentally transformed the way we communicate with each other, network, share our art, and create positive change. What's one of the first thing you do is you Google them, okay, what's their Twitter handle? And it's really kind of revolutionized our access to information and, sharing of information. I mean, it's done everything from toppled oppressive regimes, or helped toppled, in doing so, serving as really an instrument of social change in one of the most powerful ways possible, right? Liberation. Arab Spring, being one example, and how, really helped fuel the revolutionary wave of demonstrations and protesting occurring in that occurred in the Arab world beginning in December of 2010. It's increased conversation across geographical, economic, ideological lines. Each filmmaker on our panel today all have made films that celebrate the power of social sharing to make an impact on our world, or have used social sharing to get out their message of change and solutions for a better future and a healthier community. We have Joey Dumont, the Naked brand, which you guys might have seen. It was screened today at 10 a.m. So just in the way in which our access to communication right now through the internet, through social media, is really forcing brands to be a lot more transparent. And Joseph here is a partner of Questis, and he really works to pursue and grow client relation and partner relationships while elevating awareness about the agency. He's on the board of iMedia, and he's working with such industry leaders as Verizon, Disney, ABC, Suzuki. So really small companies, right? We have Anne Oren, and she actually her film In Contact is going to have its world premiere here at 6:15. So you guys can definitely be a part of that. And it explores what's happening to things like intimacy and romance. So it's kind of the other side of what is going on with us being so out there, and checking in wherever we go, and really being sort of exhibitionists, and our lives are more exposed than they ever have been. And In Contact is her first narrative feature film. The last person we have in person here is Porter, and he was the director of Crocodile in the Yangtze. So it's his first documentary film, and he happened to be there when China's first internet company, Alibaba.com, was coming about. And then we have Matthew up here on the screen joining us. Hello, Matthew.
Hi.
There you go. Hello. And his film is Broken on All Sides, his documentary that he directed. Race, Mass Incarceration, and New Visions for Criminal Justice in the U.S. So he has a degree in filmmaking as well as in law. And he was really interested, he was working with community legal services and just witnessing the poverty, police brutality, and racism that was happening in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he was working. And he became politicized and decided he was going to make a film about it, and that's how Broken on All Sides came about. So Porter, you mind if we start with you?
Sure.
Your film chronicles the way social media and the internet is impacting historically closed societies. How do you see its potential for opening up access to information and contributing to a freer press in China and around the world?
Yeah, it's interesting. I got first involved in the internet in China in about 1999, and at that time there were less than 10 million people using the internet in China, and that's out of a population of about 1.2, 1.3 billion at the time. And when I first got involved in China in 1994, I was a student, and when I was there, any letter that was sent to me would be opened while I was at the school. People would open it, read it. Fax machines had to be registered with the local government. And then when you would buy even like The Economist magazine, or New York Times, or International Herald Tribune, articles the government didn't like would have been ripped out of it. And so in 1999, when the internet arrived in China, really when it started to grow, just my personal interest in getting involved is because I saw the huge potential the internet had to change China. because the government had really tight controls. And over time, what I saw, and the reason, personally I was involved is, number one, I thought that working in e-commerce in the internet in China would be a really positive force on people's livelihoods. But just as important, I knew that once the internet had taken hold for commerce, which the government really embraced, once the internet had taken hold for commerce, well, when people's jobs are dependent on it, it's impossible to really just suddenly close it off. I mean, if people, right now you have 500 million people in China using the internet, and so many people's lives are now dependent on it, that the fear that I think was once there in about 1999 was that the government would just create a silo. So clearly, by Western standards, China hasn't opened up its society to free press, free media. But having been on the ground in China, you see the huge impact it has with people even more active on tweeting and blogging than actually I'd say in the West. I mean, the social networks, the social interactions, probably because the culture in China is so much more community organized, of bigger groups of friends communicating with other groups of friends. Now they have a way to link up, and so the society has changed dramatically. The economy has changed dramatically. The politics haven't changed dramatically, but they are changing. So certain things that used to happen and the government might quietly cover up in one small village, now it's instantly tweeted and talked about. So the government has become more responsive, and in that sense, China has become more democratic. And the fact that you have 500 million people using the internet, although it hasn't been the sort of Arab Spring that led to a new government regime, it is changing China. And so it's a really, I think, an optimistic time in China, because the internet has really been changing it. And that's why my film, when people say, oh, Crocodile and the Yangtze, your film's about an internet company in China, the first impression in the US tends to be, well, how is that even possible? I mean, the government's so controlling, so restrictive. But actually, for 99.9% of the things the everyday person wants to do online, they can still do it. For that last bit, which is more true self-expression for political means or for democratic means, that's yet to come. But I have a feeling that in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see the internet finally changing China's politics as well as the economy and society.
The floodgates are now open, so that's exciting, at least.
Yeah, I think of it as a Trojan horse in a way. I mean, knowledge and information's already come through the gates. Half the population's online. It's really impossible to just shut down the internet. So yeah, the change is definitely there.
In Contact explores the alienation and objectification that can result from living our lives with so much transparency. But on the other side of the coin, how has social media and social sharing brought us closer together and helped build community, in your opinion?
I think that for each person, it expands their circles. If it's a community circle, if it's friendships, which I think that they're a little different from each other, and I think it morphed friendships, and it added many friendships, allegedly friendships that gave us a feeling that we're not alone, but actually we are. And I was interested in what, I mean, in my film it shows people that really are close. There's also a mother and daughter and close friends, and it just shows where you do have the option of meeting up and being together. Sometimes you don't really have to do it to communicate. And I don't know how to address community. I think you feel there's something empowering about that feeling, oh, I have so many friends on all those networks, and if you call out you need advice, you need to announce something, it's very immediate. People will support you, comment on your whatever you're expressing, but I think that it's, there's something problematic about the quality of these relationships. If it's for a larger effort, for some kind of a particular cause, for a group, a community, I think it's very, very useful, of course. Like, you can see in a lot of films here, but I'm more interested in commenting about, that's okay, but more friendships. And I think what happens is, because there are cameras involved in all this, or even if it's tweeting and it's mainly text, there's an audience, so it's, let's say there are many stages, and it enables each one to expand their inherent exhibitionism. It doesn't mean that everybody wants to be a performer, but it just becomes so legitimate. So you always have to, you additionally have to define who you are, not just in front of live people, but in these, on these stages. So it's a new kind of element of your personality that comes out in social media. And some people feel more comfortable with Twitter because they're better.
Do you see this too with blogging, in terms of how, like, now a lot of people, you know, everyone's a blogger, and, you know, people all feel like they have a story to tell now, a lot of people, and
yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a form of stage, and it's great, I think, that people can do that, especially with blogging, and, you know, concentrate all your writings, and then, you know, some blogs become more popular than others, but sometimes you don't, when you start something like that, you don't know, unlike an actor that's on stage, or a musician, you know, performance, you don't know who your audience is, so you kind of, you have to really believe in what you're interested in bringing out to do it. Later, you know, if something becomes popular, then you get that confidence that you have an audience, but you don't know. And I think that we've all been exposed to so many different kinds of performers growing up on television and film, that people have somewhat of an understanding on how to get their picture taken well, how to perform in front of a camera, how to write, how to brand yourself, and not even people that you think are super timid and keep to themselves normally, they do find a certain persona to present in social media. And even people that are not, you know, some people are on social media, but they don't add content, they're still there, they're just watching, so it's another element of it, you know, and the other side of it, perhaps, the voyeuristic side, but it's all, it's like another layer of social interaction, social anxiety that we have. You know, if in the past it was just, oh, I'm riding on the subway, public transportation, or I'm going into a bar, and how do I present myself? How do I want others to perceive me? And, you know, all the social signifiers, it becomes a whole different language through social media.
And then, do you think people give more value to things that happen if they're out there? Like, you know, they say it didn't really happen if you don't have photos, then you didn't post it on Facebook, or, you know, that almost like if you're not living now with an audience and doing it in front of people, that it's sort of, it's not as worthy, and like maybe reality TV is sort of lending that to, like, it's a more valuable life if it's lived in front of people.
Yeah, I think this is definitely what's happening. And last time I went to a music concert, I saw every, like, you have this band that you really like and you want to experience it, and everybody had, I was sitting really, really high up, so I could see everyone, and not everybody were taping it with their phone. And then you want to say, okay, I was in the show, but you can, I don't know if you can have the romantic, real experience of a live show the same way. I mean, I personally try to make an effort, if I go through a certain experience, not to first experience it and then somehow transmit it in social media, to really try to have the genuine experience. But I think the genuine experience for most people has shifted into these, what I call consumer technology type of documentation. And
so almost experiencing it through hand, through your Instagram photo or your camera lens, or
yeah.
Did you see that article is called "We've Become Braggers"?
No?
Oh, sorry. There's an article recently I read that was, we're all a bunch of braggers. And that's really what it was. We weren't experiencing the event for the event anymore. You're actually just trying to actually tell everybody that this is what I'm doing. And you're not enjoying the show.
Yeah.
So it's now become more important to tell people that you're cool than actually to be cool.
Joey, what social technologies can today's empowered consumers use to find out more about the policies and the ethics of the companies that make the products they use every day? What in your film, The Naked Brand, I know The Good Guide is a very nice, and you guys should all add it, look in the App Store, Good Guide. It's a fabulous app. You put it to the product you're going to buy and you can find out, well, what are the, the policies of the, the company behind the product. So I was wondering if you had any more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the supercomputer in your pocket or your purse is the piece of technology. And that actually specifically speaks to Darren O'Rourke, who is the founder of Good Guide. He came up with this idea because he was the guy who wrote, I don't know if you guys, for those who didn't see the film, Darren O'Rourke was the journalist. He's a professor at Berkeley, and he was commissioned out to Vietnam to figure out what was going on with Nike and their manufacturing. And he outed them in 1997, and it cost Nike $2 billion of market value within their first week, and a hoopla all over the country, and they had to change their ways. So he developed this application basically out of frustration for what was going on with companies not being transparent about who they are. And the application itself gives you a rating system. So if you want to be, if sustainability is very important for you as an individual, then you can set that within the app. If being green or if being efficient on price or whatever these things are, you can actually set these. So the barcode itself, when you walk into a retail outlet, you take the app, you put it over the barcode, it tells you exactly what that product and what that company represents as it relates to a rating system within the Good Guide infrastructure. And that's an example, Sarah, of what technology is allowing us to do today. But I think bigger than that, and this is kind of what our thesis is in the movie, is that companies themselves, and this is something that is in the press now politically, both and the right and the left, and everyone's blaming everybody about corporations not doing good things. For those of you who are unaware, corporations have two reporting structures legally. They have a board and they have shareholders. These are publicly traded companies. They have no responsibility at all to do anything good ever. And the fact that we think they should do those things, they're not legally liable to do any of this. So what does that mean? And that's what Alex Bogusky was talking about, is that corporations themselves control our governments, and they control the money, and they control the policy. So what he's saying, Mr. Bogusky, was that now it's in our hands. So if you think a corporation is evil and they're doing bad things, you can share this. You can use your phone. You can use Twitter. You can use Facebook. You can use all of these tools to share a story about, I'm not going to buy from this company anymore, and here's why. And then you are now, as a consumer, are in control of what you're going to purchase and what you're not going to purchase. And I think that's the democratization of corporations through people. And we're not there yet. We have 50% adoption, I think, on smartphones and broadband. So you see a lot of these things happening, but we're not there. 5 years from now, who knows? Because look at the last, 7 years ago, Facebook did not exist. Twitter was a sound, right? 4G was a parking spot. LinkedIn was a prison, right? So none of these things existed 7 years ago. And now we have all these cool new buzzwords. And Skype was a typo, right? So you look at these kind of things and you think, how much has everything changed? And then 2007, this little phone has more revenue, just this phone has more revenue than Microsoft Corporation as a whole. This, the iPhone, didn't even exist until 2007. So massive change is going to happen. And this, I think, is the epicentric tool to consumers actually engaging with their voice, with what they want to say, how they want to communicate, and what exactly they're going to do to change the world, if that's what they want to do.
So do you think that we have a responsibility to hold companies accountable, and what exactly is that responsibility?
Well, I think Foxconn example is a perfect one, and we talked about this at lunch. Apple is the biggest corporation and the most successful corporation in the history of mankind, per 30 days ago. They have $120 billion in cash in the bank. They have the most sexy products, the coolest ecosystem, app store. Everything they do is ninja cool and unbelievably beautiful, right? That's why I like my phone. I bought it because it's aesthetically pretty. And it's idiot-proof. I mean, just boom, yes, yes, yes. They get the joke, right? So they do some really cool stuff. What they don't get is transparency. They don't want to have anything to do with transparency. So can the consumer out them? Yes. Because Foxconn, as an example, they paid their employees $130 a week. Worked them 60 to 70 hours a week. So the math is about $1.18 an hour. The reason they got, sadly, the reason that they became press-worthy was because people were committing suicide on their building. So they have hundreds of thousands of people in China, and these kids, 20 years old, making my phone, were working 16 hours a day, and they were sleeping in cots, bunk beds, going to bed, getting up, and doing the same thing. Ad infinitum. So they literally went up to the top of the building and flung themselves off, and they killing themselves. So what did Foxconn do as a remedy? Can't make this up. They put nets around the building. Okay? So what happened now? Tim Cook flew out there, the CEO of Apple, and took care of it. He didn't take care of it because he had some huge conscience issue around it. It became known from us the consumer, from people like us. And I'm a hypocrite. I don't know, 80 of these computers in our office, and I wasn't going to go and tell our creative team they couldn't use Apple anymore. I was angry, and I was disappointed, and I'm sad, but I didn't actually stop using the product. So what you can do as a consumer, as opposed to that, is you can then share with your friends. Hey, what do you guys think of Foxconn? And that's exactly what happened. In our film, Pink Slime, that was recent. We just put that in, because that was so new. This woman, Bettina, in Houston, came out and said, I don't want my kids eating this. I don't know what it is. And then she did her homework, and then she tweeted, and then BPI, actually the company that manufactures these, closed 3 plants in 30 days out of 4 plants. And they're hosed. They're going out of business because what they were doing was no longer acceptable to the consumer. I mean, it existed for years, and I've been eating that. Taco Bell is one of my favorite places, especially at 2 in the morning. And I ate that crap for years.
Fourth meal.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot going on with consumers and what they can do. I genuinely believe the consumers are going to be the judge and jury of corporations, but not for a while. It's going to take maybe another 5 to 10 years before people understand they have that power in their own hands. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to that point. Matthew. Hello, Matthew.
Hello.
In Broken on All Sides, you delve deep into the way one of our main social institutions, the penal system, are used to oppress people and limit their options. How do you see social media as a force for fighting institutional discrimination and for liberating people from the bonds and limitations of their social economic conditions?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think it is one very useful new tool in organizing, and I think it's a tactic to be added to the tool belt. You talked about the Arab Spring, and I think, you know, in some ways those revolutions were mislabeled Twitter revolutions because nothing certainly replaces face-to-face organizing and community street organizing. And in some ways, social media ends up being a way that governments can see the steps of organizers and know what they're going to do beforehand. So I know that in many times the activists would actually publicly tweet out something about what they were going to do that was a lie, face-to-face talk to each other so that the government was tricked. So I think it's not the solution to social movements, but I think it's one very useful tool. For me, I guess some of the people that my movie is about and that I hope to empower and that they can use as an organizing tool are, you know, very poor people in almost third world within the United States. And I have to think about the fact that a lot of them don't have access to internet in quite the same way. Although a lot of people now have smartphones, and even, you know, the poorest people have access to Twitter on their smartphones. So I guess I would say that it is a very useful tool, and for promotion's sake, I mean, I use Kickstarter, and there's a great way to sort of community organizations and individuals invested in a project very, very early on through social media. But again, nothing replaces sort of face-to-face organizing and grassroots, screenings where I go into communities and hand out flyers to people and talk to them about social problems.
Thank you. Do we have any questions out there?
Well, my husband had to go and project in the other room, so he has a question for Joey. That if consumers are watching your film and learning from that, but are corporations also coming on board more and seeing kind of the things that some of the people you profile are doing and looking to do that, buy that as inspiration?
I think that the corporations are aware, specifically, obviously, the companies we talk to, but in our film, for those who didn't see, Patagonia is a very transparent company, and Yvon Chouinard is a genius at understanding the importance of that. And he then went to Walmart to talk to them about sustainability. And in the film, we have a vignette about one of their energy farms, which are those huge windmills that are 30 stories high. And the reason that Walmart actually did this wasn't because they were trying to be green. It was because it actually made them more money. And that's kind of what Yvon Chouinard talks about. He said, I'm not just being transparent because I'm an alpinist and I love Mother Nature. He said, it actually makes me more money as a company. Patagonia's had the best 5 years of profitability ever since their Footprint Chronicles campaign came out. So him just being forthright with this consumer and say, hey, I don't have everything, chemicals you have to pour on the jackets to waterproof them, right? There's a carbon footprint, there's a sustainability issue there. He's trying to remedy that. And so I think that companies are becoming aware that it will make them more money. And per my reference with corporations, they don't have a need to do that legally, right? I think that when they now can recognize that they make more money by doing good, that's the difference. That's the delineation for me. And I don't pretend, specifically as someone who is a businessman, I don't want us to represent that you have to be, a crunchy granola and run a company like Cliff Bar, which is awesome at a sustainability level, but can other people do that? No. And if you're running a big plant, if you actually have manufacturing and distribution facilities and a multinational conglomerate, you have a huge carbon footprint, and you're not going to be recognized by the green community. So I think corporations are going to do it because they make more money. And that's corporations, for-profit corporations. That's their goal. That's why they exist. And that shouldn't be something they should back away from. I think corporations should stand up and say that. We're here to make money. And if you can make money and do good at the same time, it's a win-win.
Then that's sustainable in itself,
Of course. Even more so.
economically too. You had a question too?
But right now, I'm actually interested in what you think about what he just said, because your film was on Alibaba and how that was essentially how they were more concerned with trying to improve the internet landscape in China, and how that was the #1 concern for years and years and years. They didn't make money. So what do you feel about what he just said?
No, actually, it's great to hear all this because I totally agree. I mean, you have a local example, Zappos, which is an e-commerce company which is known for sort of saying, hey, you can do both, and by doing good for people, good for society, good for your customers, put your heart in the right place, then good things will happen. And that's actually what my film is about, is that here was a case where we looked, when I was at Alibaba, which I'm not anymore, but when I was there, we said, okay, first thing we should do is just make the best possible thing for customers and make sure it's aligned with what's good for the society as a whole. And, I think there are a lot of idealists who are behind that, and that's why the company, in the end, succeeded and went, surpassed eBay in China, is because it focused on these things. And then eventually, after doing the right thing for a long time, Alibaba and Taobao started to charge money, and the money came in. I mean, there's always a risk. Like when I see Tony Xie, that's his name, I think, from Zappos. Xie, yeah. Like, I really admire all the things he talks about, and I think he believes it, and the staff really believe it. just like when I was at Alibaba, I mean, we all believed it, and people outside the companies usually think it's probably you're just saying that to fulfill some social, social good or something, to a tokenism. But I think people genuinely believe that. But there's always a risk that if you take that sort of high moral stand, when you're faced with a gray issue that's not black and white, you might make a decision that's going to alienate a lot of your customers. And that's why I'm sure the advice you'd give is, with the Patagonia example, is that you say, hey, this is a work in progress. We're continuing to improve and do the right thing, and we'll take whatever feedback we get. Don't expect us to be perfect, but expect us to always try our best to improve. So I assume that's the advice you'd give. But I think the more transparent you are, so I'm encouraged by everything he said, because I agree.
Can I also
Yeah.
I thought that what was most incredible in the film, and the most interesting outcome of the expansion of social media that you bring out in the film, is how money that used to be used, perhaps, like the example with the Chanel commercial that cost $1 million, all that $20 million, it's money that exists in the world that can be used in so many ways, and they do it to create an image, to attract their customers. And then it was a Pepsi that did the initiative. So, and it's clear for everybody, Pepsi is working for just to make more profit, their corporation, fine, but the fact that because of this, it's almost like peer pressure, but it's like consumer pressure, and then they had the initiative to, people propose good causes for them to invest in, right? And that they invested the same amount of money in that, isn't that, they're still doing it to bring out the image they want to, just the same as Chanel is doing to bring the image they want to, but it's just, it's so better integrated in the world, with the consumers. So it's, of course, they're not coming from such a benevolent place when they're doing it, but it's just, they're being forced to do it, and it's great. And I'm very, very curious. You're in advertising yourself, right? And I'm really curious to see how advertising will change. I think this is a huge change that we're going to have. I don't know, I wasn't aware of a lot of things. It was really, really interesting.
Yeah, as you saw with Yvon Chouinard in the beginning, he said advertising as we know it is dead. He thinks it is. And I actually...
Do you believe that?
Well, not now. It's not like an immediacy, but I do believe that, and we believe as an agency, that telling truthful stories is a much better way to advertise your brand, right? So when we say things like advertising can help save the world, it sounds like hyperbole in the beginning, but as you start to deconstruct that, am I not close enough? As you start to deconstruct that, you realize that if you can use a platform and you as an advertiser are the conduit to a company doing really cool things, specifically if I was going to represent Walmart, which is not a very liked company in the United States, I would tell the tree farm story. I would talk about the cardboard derivative story. If I was representing a major coffee company that's not Starbucks, and this is a true story, they have 200 cafes versus 17,000, and they're doing unbelievably cool things with the farmers. So they're actually getting in, there's this middlemen that are making tons of money brokering deals between these farmers in South America and the United States. And they, as a company, have gone in and done some really cool stuff to garner partnerships that make more money for the farmers. And that's a story that needs to be told. So my opinion, and it's just mine, not my partner's, is that I do believe that advertising in the future is going to be telling truthful stories based on behavior. So the companies can no longer say, we're a good company, here's our tagline, here's our PR, here's our advertising. They have to be a good company. And if they are a good company, then they can actually propagate that message out with passion and authenticity, and all the things that I think that the consumers are craving right now. PepsiCo, as an example, we got hammered by some of our people in the screening in San Francisco, a lot of liberal people there. And they said, how can you possibly say that PepsiCo is doing good things? Like, this is a good thing. We're not saying that PepsiCo itself has a great carbon footprint, or that they're not doing things that we don't know about. That's true. But the idea behind it is, what are they going to do 10 years from now to be a better company? And is it like Tony's company, it's all about happiness? And as I mentioned to a lot of people earlier, it's genuine. I've been there. I've been on their campus. I've talked to their people. I've watched the smiles. They're genuine and they're real. And these people are happy to go to work there. So that's the story. We went there because we thought we were going to get this really cool story around customer service, because that's what Tony believes. But the bigger piece was the happiness. Hi, welcome to Zappos. How can I help you today? All day, everywhere you go. And the free coffee, free massage, free food, free everything, because it's a happy place. Unbelievable business idea. I mean, duh. Right? Let's make a place that's fun to come to and everyone's nice to one another and there's mutual respect and, you know, like, oh, that's not going to work. Like, yes, it is. And it did.
And going back to the sustainability too, what's cool about that is then they found out, like, wow, happy people make better employees. Wow, happy people are more productive. Happy people do a better job. Happy people, you know, when you treat people with respect, then wow, they're going to, you know, take pride in their work and do a good job just because, you know, they feel, you know, that they have dignity.
But if I may add, they're also doing it because they're also a corporation and they want to make a profit.
Yes.
So it's kind of, yeah, that's always the it's fine, but it's always the bottom line.
As a business, yes.
Yes.
For-profit corporations have one purpose.
Yeah.
Make money.
Yeah, but and that's why we're saying that it's also good for business. That,
Exactly.
That employees are happy there because they end up being more productive and they end
And
up
the
doing a
business
better job.
flourishes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone else is better. Sir.
This is addressed, I think, Matthew and Porter. I don't have the reference, I don't have a smartphone, he's not with me right now, but I read something that intrigued me a while back, that Weiwei, the very famous dissident in China.
So I don't know if any people have seen the film, was it Never Sorry, Ai Weiwei? Amazing documentary about this artist in China that you were talking about, and all his sort of struggles to express himself in the face of all the government resistance to some of his policies. So he's really active on Twitter, which actually, you know, last I checked, Twitter is actually technically blocked in China. So if you're in China, you can't get on Facebook, you can't get on Twitter, but the more internationally minded people do. But China has its own systems that are like by local companies. There's one, Weibo, which is also, it's like a local version. And because from the Chinese government perspective, they kind of block out all the foreign things they can't control for the social networks, which really scare them. But then they sort of encourage the development of the local ones. So the things people may not realize is, I mean, on these blogs and Twitters, it's a huge active thing in China where just people probably tweet on the local version of Twitter much more than they do, you know, even in the West, I would say. And it hasn't been fully used in terms of mobilizing some big political change. I'm not so sure about the article. I haven't seen the article you talked about, but it was fun to watch the movie because you see that now in China there is a sort of, they're not shutting down all the social networks yet because there'd be such a outcry. If a really sensitive thing comes up, then they might block it. But the fact that Ai Weiwei is still out there tweeting and has all these followers shows that maybe the government's a little bit nervous and a little bit more fragile than people think when it comes to shutting down all the systems. I still hope, you know, one of the reasons I'm spending more time in the US now is I finally got tired of being in China where you had to go through this VPN and a really slow internet speed. And after a while, you kind of want to be able to feed your brain with the latest information and knowledge. And although you can still get it in China, it takes longer. It's a hassle. You can't send video files easily. So it's changing, but the film Never Sorry, Ai Weiwei is also, it's a great one to see how it's all playing out. Okay, maybe, yeah, go ahead.
I can respond a little bit to that. I was still hard to hear the questions, so I apologize. I'm familiar with the artist. I haven't read that article, but I guess I would say as far as activists who are operating in, you know, severe conditions of repression and oppression, they often have to use, you legal means for activism and extra legal means. And I guess I would say one example that comes to mind for prisoners, the latest round of prisoner strikes in the U.S., which ended up being the largest prisoner strike ever in U.S. history in Georgia, was organized through cell phones that were smuggled into the prison. And the prisoners used cell phones to communicate and decide when they would go on strike and basically not come out of their cells and refuse meals. Obviously, you're not supposed to be able to get a cell phone in prison. So I guess that's one example. In pre-revolutionary Russia, revolutionary or radical or even liberal newspapers that were controlled by the government were illegals. So the activists there had to actually work outside of Russia, write the newspapers, and then smuggle those newspapers into the country and use that as an organizing tool. So that's, I guess, the best the way I can answer the question without hearing more. If you want to contact me directly, you're welcome to contact me at brokenonallsides@gmail.com.
So this is just general. Any one of you can answer this. So there's a number of social collaboration, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. It's all these new buzzwords, all these tools out here, and brands are raising their awareness about their products and services, and they need an authentic voice and being transparent. But how are the consumers and end users connecting outside of the social and interest graph? As a collective, is it just through a hashtag about a certain cause? Is it a website? I mean, how are they connecting and how can they empower themselves?
Like offline collections?
It could be both offline, online. I mean, brands are, marketing was typically a one-way messaging. They're doing all these different types of ads, promoted tweets, and so forth. How does an end user get to do that? Where brands, they can promote their specific cause. How are end users doing that? Are they coming up as a collective around a certain cause, or is it, one person kickstarting it and starting this hashtag, or, all these different tools? How is the end users or consumers, how can they empower themselves?
I think it can start with a one person, definitely. The woman in your film, I think she's the one with the meat.
Oh, yes.
She wrote.
Bettina.
She wrote a tweet,
a blog
about it, and left the house, and then she came home later, and there were.
Yeah, there's 1,000, signatures, and then.
Oh, she wrote a petition. She did an online petition.
Yeah.
And it just. I think you never know, with hashtagging, for example, you can get to people that not necessarily your friends in all the platforms, and it can just, the fire can get caught if the statement you're making touches other people. So I think in that way maybe it brings end users, as you say, much closer competitors to big brands that have more funding, more sources to send out a message professionally. It's the end users and the big companies or governments that use regular communication tools like newspapers, and I think they're becoming a little closer.
All right, so maybe we can continue this conversation through social media or offline, in person, as we walk out the door. I just want to say thank you so much to all the filmmakers here. Thank you so much to Ross. And just to touch on your point really fast so that we don't just, leave you hanging, I think I would agree with what Ann said, and I don't know about you guys too, but since you're filmmakers with a powerful message, I think that you might agree that the first step is just to have something important to say, something powerful to say, to communicate, and then just to get out there and do it.
If it's not self-serving, it's authentic, passionate. this example she pointed out in the movie. This woman was really upset because her children were eating pink slime, as were all of her children's friends in Houston and all over the United States. So it was authentic, it was real, you know, there was no ulterior motive. I mean, I think that individualism, as a case in point, was powerful because of that. And I think that that's just something brands are starting to understand too. They got to be authentic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew, for Skyping in.
Thank you, Matthew.